Hello, my name is Kevin Engel, and I am a faculty member with University of Phoenix Online, and this is PowerPoint Expectation. And if you are going to prepare a PowerPoint presentation in one of my classes, it's pretty important that you go through this module to understand adult learning concepts as well as the expectations for PowerPoint presentations. With that, let's go ahead and get started on PowerPoint expectations. PowerPoint expectations will cover the compare and contrast of two different slides entitled A Tale of Two Slides, general expectations for all slides in a PowerPoint presentation, expectations for specific slides to include the title slide, the introduction and conclusion slide, and the reference slides. And then in part 2, we will cover the adult learning concepts. In this next section, A Tale of Two Slides, we're going to take a pretty popular European literature piece and we're going to analyze it in two different slides. One is going to be pretty ineffective and the other one pretty effective. And I want you to take a look at the difference. For those of you who don't know, this is the beginning of Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities, and I don't want you to actually read it. I want you to actually listen to my voice. It might be very hard for you because it's very difficult when something like this is thrown up on a slide for the audience to actually pay attention to the words of the speaker instead of actually reading it. So this is a very ineffective slide because it actually writes out what should be on the speaker's notes, and we are going to show you what it should look like. You should never have just a bunch of words on a slide, so I never want to see this type of slide. Unless you are actually putting in a quote from somebody, then it should be acceptable. As you can see in this slide, it's the same information, but it is presented in a way that is bulleted. It shows the comparisons, both compare and contrasting the information. It doesn't put the audience in information overload. And so this is how you would prefer to have the information actually presented. As you can see, one of the rules that we're going to talk about is the rule of 6. This does actually break the rule of 6, but it's the reason you don't want to actually add another slide, because if you did, it would cause more information than you actually wanted. So this is, once again, by Dickens. As you can see, the citation is on the actual slide. So this is how you'd want it. Some general information that you want to be aware of on all slides. First, you want to pick a standard font, either Arial, Times New Roman, or Courier New, just like when drafting a paper for APA. And you want the same font throughout the entire presentation. Secondly, you want to follow the rule of 6. And in the rule of 6, you want to have no more than 6 words per line and 6 lines per page. Now, as a general rule, this rule is sometimes meant to be broken. In the previous slide, the reason why we had 8 lines on the page is that we did not want to separate the information that we had, because if we did, we would actually risk decreasing the effectiveness of the presentation. You don't want to have too much on the page, and you don't want to separate it if you don't need to. This is where you have to make the choice as the presenter on what's most effective for the audience based upon adult learning principles. And so that's where you have to make the decision. But note that you can actually break the rule of 6, but the general rule is no more than 6 words per line, no more than 6 lines per slide. Also, adult learning concepts. We're going to learn more about adult learning concepts in the second section of this module, but know that you need to incorporate adult learning concepts throughout your presentation, like catering to the visual learner, the auditory learner, and the tactile learner. Also, you want your notes page to follow APA formatting. You want to put citations on your slides, not just in your notes page, but also on the slide itself. Many students don't do that, so you want to make sure that you do that. It is okay to go over the number of slides that you've been allocated. If your assignment says 8 to 10 slides, it is perfectly okay with me to go over the number of slides, as long as you run an effective presentation. That's it for general expectations. The title slide should be the title, just like the title page on your paper, in that the information should be in the same order as the information on the title page on a paper. You should have the title of the presentation, the author or authors, the course, the date, and the facilitator. And it obviously will be the first title, will be the first slide in the presentation. Now, one of the things that I do want to also suggest, and I want to take an opportunity to suggest this, is it might be helpful if you have a learning team presentation to assign one person to be the person to collect all of the slides, and to be the person to put the presentation together, and to be the person to standardize everything. And one of the things that I have found is when you have this person, what they can do is be in charge of the title slide, they can be in charge of the introduction and conclusion, and also make sure that everything flows properly, and make sure that everything looks the same. And one of the things that they can do is make sure that it looks not like you have 4 or 5 different people that have just thrown different slides in and put it together, but that it comes from one person. And I think that's very important, because even though it's a team effort, I think that it's very important that it looks like it's been done by one person. So it's just one of the things that I have found to be very effective in my tenure in my profession, in working with teams, but also in academia as well. So it can be the team leader that does that, or it can just be one person that's assigned to be kind of the point person to do the title, introduction, conclusion, and wrapping things up. And they can be the person who submits it as well. But anyway, so that's the title slide. Okay, the introduction and conclusion slides. I put these together because they should be very similar in nature. For each of them, you may need 2 slides for each of them for a total of 4. And the introduction should have one slide that's devoted to the background of the information that you are trying to convey. It should be a background slide, gives the audience information about what you're going to present on, gives them some information about the subject matter. And then the second slide should list the major points that you are going to discuss in your presentation. Now, one thing that is important to discuss is that the heading should not read introduction. And just like in your paper, it should be follow APA format, and it should actually read the title of the presentation. So that's one thing that people sometimes struggle with, in that it should not read introduction, but it should read the title of the presentation. And then the conclusion should have a slide that wraps things up, gives kind of an overall summary of things, and then a slide that lists major points. And I think that's a good way to present it, and that is the expectation for the introduction and conclusion slides. Okay, now we've come to the last major point, and that is the references slide. Number one, you need to use APA formatting, and that goes for all references, and you should be able to use the reference and citation generator for this. So everything that was cited on your slides should actually be referenced on your references page. Number two, you should use the same size font that you've used throughout your presentation, and that is a 32-point font. And number three, you need to use as many slides as necessary to be able to have that 32-point font. Use APA formatting, use 32-point font, and add as many slides as necessary to make that happen.